They left me in the snow to die. I remember the way my mother looked away when they dragged me from our tent. I remember the silence of my sisters, their eyes fixed on the ground as if the frozen earth held more importance than my fate. I remember the elders gathering in a circle, their faces carved from the same cold stone as the mountains that surrounded our village. And I remember the verdict, spoken by Chief Aldrich himself, his voice carrying no emotion as he condemned me for a crime I did not commit. Treason, they called it. They said I had led the Southern Raiders to our camp. They said the blood of the 6 warriors who died in the ambush was on my hands. It did not matter that I had been gathering herbs in the forest when the attack happened. It did not matter that I had no knowledge of the raiders or their plans. Someone needed to be blamed, and I was the convenient choice. The orphan, the outsider, the girl who had been taken in by the clan out of pity, never truly accepted, never truly loved. So they stripped me of my furs, leaving me with only a thin wool dress that offered no protection against the biting wind. They took my boots and gave me worn leather wrappings that were already falling apart. And then they marched me to the edge of the frozen wasteland, the cursed territory beyond the northern mountains where no human had ever survived. Aldrich himself pushed me past the boundary stones. His hand was rough against my back, and I stumbled forward into the knee-deep snow. When I turned to look at him, to plead one last time for mercy, I saw nothing in his eyes. No guilt, no hesitation. Only the cold satisfaction of a man ridding himself of an inconvenience. They left without another word. I watched their torches disappear into the darkness, growing smaller and smaller until they were nothing but distant stars swallowed by the night. And then I was alone. The first hour, I walked. I told myself I would find shelter, a cave perhaps, somewhere to wait out the night. I told myself I would survive this, that I would prove them wrong, that I would find my way to another village and start a new life. But the cold was relentless. It seeped through my thin dress and into my bones. It turned my fingers numb and my lips blue. It made every breath feel like swallowing shards of ice. By the second hour, I could no longer feel my feet. I stumbled more than I walked, my body growing heavier with each step. The snow seemed to reach up for me, pulling at my legs, begging me to lie down and rest. And part of me wanted to. Part of me was so tired, so broken, that the thought of simply closing my eyes and letting the cold take me seemed like a mercy. But I kept moving. I do not know why. Perhaps it was stubbornness. Perhaps it was spite. Perhaps some primal part of me refused to give Aldrich the satisfaction of an easy death. The blizzard came without warning. One moment the sky was clear, the stars visible through the frozen mist. The next, the world turned white. Wind howled around me like a living thing, tearing at my hair and my dress, pushing me down into the snow. I could not see more than an arm's length in front of me. I could not hear anything but the roar of the storm. I fell. My knee struck something hard beneath the snow, a rock perhaps, and pain shot through my leg like fire. I tried to stand, but my body would not obey. My muscles had given up. My strength was gone. I collapsed face first into the snow, the cold pressing against my cheeks like a lover's cruel kiss. This is it, I thought. This is how I die, alone, forgotten, blamed for sins I never committed. I closed my eyes and waited for the end, but the end did not come. Instead, I heard something, a sound that cut through the howling wind, low and resonant and impossible. A growl, deep, rumbling, so powerful that I felt it vibrate through the snow beneath me. My eyes flew open. At first, I saw nothing but white. The blizzard was too thick, the darkness too complete. But then a shape emerged from the storm, and my heart stopped beating in my chest. She was enormous. That was my first thought, the only thought my frozen mind could form. Enormous. She stood on 2 legs like a human, but she was taller than any human I had ever seen, easily over 7 feet, perhaps more. Her body was covered in thick silver fur that shimmered like moonlight even in the darkness of the storm. Her shoulders were broad, her arms long and muscled, ending in hands that were tipped with claws as long as my fingers. A tail swayed behind her, thick and powerful, brushing against the snow. But it was her face that stole the breath from my lungs. She was not a wolf, not entirely. Her features were lupine, yes, with an elongated muzzle and pointed ears that swiveled toward me as she approached. But there was something undeniably feminine about her, something almost beautiful in the sharp angles of her cheekbones and the intelligence gleaming in her golden eyes. Her lips were dark, pulled back slightly to reveal fangs that could tear through bone. And yet there was no snarl on her face, no hunger, only a strange, intense curiosity. I should have screamed. I should have tried to run, to crawl, to do something. But I could not move. I could only stare as she closed the distance between us, her massive paws leaving deep prints in the snow. She moved with a grace that seemed impossible for a creature her size, each step deliberate and silent despite the storm raging around us. She stopped directly above me. Her shadow fell over my body, blocking the wind, and for a moment, I felt an absurd sense of relief. At least I would not freeze. At least this death would be quick. But she did not kill me. Instead, she lowered herself to one knee, bringing her face close to mine. I could feel the heat radiating from her body, a warmth that seemed impossible in this frozen wasteland. Her breath washed over my face, hot and damp, carrying a scent that was wild and earthy and strangely comforting. Her golden eyes studied me with an intensity that made my skin prickle, moving over my face, my body, my trembling hands. She made a sound, not a growl this time, but something softer. A rumble that seemed to come from deep within her chest, almost like a purr. And then, before I could react, she reached down and scooped me into her arms. I gasped at the contact. Her fur was softer than I expected, thick and warm against my frozen skin. Her arms wrapped around me like bands of iron, holding me against her chest with a gentleness that seemed at odds with her savage appearance. I could feel her heart beating beneath her fur, strong and steady, a rhythm that seemed to echo through my own body. She stood, lifting me as if I weighed nothing, and began to walk. The blizzard raged around us, but she moved through it without hesitation, her body shielding me from the worst of the wind. I tried to speak, to ask where she was taking me, but my voice would not come. My throat was too frozen, my body too weak. All I could do was press myself against her warmth and pray. I do not know how long she carried me. Time lost meaning in the storm, and I drifted in and out of consciousness, my mind clouded by cold and exhaustion. But eventually, the wind began to fade, the snow grew thinner. And when I opened my eyes again, I saw that we had entered a cave. It was larger than I expected, the ceiling rising high above us, the walls smooth and dark. But what caught my attention was the warmth. It radiated from somewhere deeper in the cave, pushing back the cold that had seeped into my bones. And there was light too, a soft orange glow that flickered against the stone. She carried me toward that light, her footsteps echoing in the silence. And as we rounded a corner, I saw it. Her den. Her nest. The floor was covered in furs, dozens of them, pelts of animals I did not recognize piled high to create a bed that looked impossibly soft. Around the edges of the chamber were bones, some small and some large, the remains of countless meals, and in the center a fire burned in a pit lined with stones, the flames dancing and crackling, filling the cave with warmth and light. She lowered me onto the furs and I sank into them with a sigh that I could not suppress. The softness was overwhelming after so many hours in the snow. The warmth seeped into my frozen limbs, bringing with it a pain that was almost unbearable as feeling began to return. I curled into myself, shivering violently, my teeth chattering so hard I thought they might shatter. And then she was there again, her massive body curling around mine, She pressed herself against my back, her arms wrapping around my waist, her tail draping over my legs. The heat of her body surrounded me, enveloped me, chased away the cold with a ferocity that left me breathless. I should have been terrified. I was lying in the arms of a monster, a creature from the old stories my mother used to tell to frighten me into obedience. But I was not afraid, not anymore. There was something in the way she held me, something protective and possessive and achingly gentle, that made my fear dissolve like snow in summer. She nuzzled the back of my neck, her breath hot against my skin, and made that purring sound again. And despite everything, despite the exile and the cold, and the impossibility of my situation, I felt my eyes grow heavy. I fell asleep in the arms of a monster. When I woke, the fire had burned low, but the cave was still warm. Sunlight filtered through a gap in the ceiling far above, painting the stone walls in shades of gold and amber. And she was still there, still wrapped around me, her chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of sleep. In the daylight, I could see her more clearly. Her fur was not merely silver, I realized, but shot through with streaks of white and pale blue, like frost on glass. Her face was peaceful in sleep. The fierce intensity I had seen the night before softened into something almost gentle. Her ears twitched occasionally, responding to sounds I could not hear, and her tail curled tighter around my legs as if afraid I might try to escape. I did not try to escape. Where would I go? Back to the Wasteland? Back to the clan that had condemned me to death? No. Whatever this creature was, whatever fate awaited me in this cave, it could not be worse than what I had already survived. I lay there for a long time, watching her sleep, feeling the rise and fall of her breath against my back. And slowly, something strange began to happen. The fear that I had expected to feel, the terror that should have consumed me, never came. Instead, I felt something else, something I had not felt in a very long time. Safe. I felt safe. She woke slowly, her golden eyes blinking open and focusing on me with an immediacy that made my heart skip. For a moment, we simply stared at each other, human and beast, predator and prey. And then she made a sound, a soft rumble that seemed almost like a question. I did not know how to answer. I did not even know if she could understand me, but I tried anyway, my voice hoarse and cracked from the cold. "Thank you," I said, "for saving me." She tilted her head, her ears swiveling toward me, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or maybe just curiosity. She reached up with one massive hand and touched my face, her claws carefully retracted, the pads of her fingers surprisingly soft against my cheek. And then she spoke.
She can speak.
The sound was rough, guttural, as if speech was not natural to her. But the word was unmistakable. Mine. I should have been frightened. I should have pulled away, demanded to know what she meant, fought against the implication of that single possessive word. But I did not. Instead, I felt warmth bloom in my chest, spreading through my body like the heat of the fire. "Mine," she said again, and this time I thought I understood. She had claimed me, not as prey, not as a meal, as something else. Something I did not have a name for yet, but that I could feel in the way she looked at me, the way she touched me, the way she had curled her body around mine through the long, cold night. The days that followed were strange and wonderful and terrifying in equal measure. She was patient with me, more patient than I deserved. She brought me food, rabbits and fish that she had caught herself, already cleaned and prepared for cooking. She showed me where to find water, an underground spring that flowed through a chamber deeper in the cave. She taught me which furs were warmest, which bones made the best tools, how to navigate the twisting passages of her home without getting lost. And slowly, I began to learn about her. Her name was difficult for human tongues, a series of growls and rumbles that I could not replicate. But she seemed pleased when I tried, her tail wagging slightly, her eyes softening with something that looked almost like affection. Eventually, I settled on a name of my own, Fenris. It was an old word from my grandmother's stories, the name of a great wolf spirit. She seemed to accept it, responding when I called for her ears perking up at the sound. She was the last of her kind, or so I understood from her halting words and expressive gestures. Her pack had been hunted, killed by humans who feared what they did not understand. She had survived only because she was the strongest, the fastest, the most cunning. But survival had come at a cost. She was alone. She had been alone for a very long time, until she found me. I am not sure when the fear finally disappeared. Perhaps it was the morning she brought me a flower, a tiny blue blossom that she had somehow found growing beneath the snow. Perhaps it was the night she woke from a nightmare, her body trembling, her whimpers filling the cave, and I found myself reaching for her without thinking, stroking her fur until she calmed. Perhaps it was the first time she let me groom her, running my fingers through her silver coat while she rumbled with contentment, her eyes half closed, her massive body relaxed beneath my touch. But at some point, the fear was simply gone, replaced by something else, something deeper, something that made my heart race whenever she looked at me, that made my skin tingle whenever she touched me, that made the cold of the wasteland seem distant and unimportant because I had her warmth to keep me safe. I started to notice things about her that I had not seen before, the way the firelight played across her features, highlighting the sharp angles of her cheekbones and the soft curve of her lips, the grace of her movements, powerful and fluid, like water flowing over stone, the intelligence in her golden eyes, the emotions that flickered there, joy and sorrow and longing and hope. She was beautiful, terrifying and monstrous and utterly, achingly beautiful, and she noticed me too. I could feel her gaze on me when she thought I was not looking, could see the hunger in her eyes, not for food, but for something else. Something that made heat rise to my cheeks and my breath quicken in my chest. She touched me more often now, her hands lingering on my shoulders, my waist, my hair. She pressed her nose against my neck, inhaling deeply, as if memorizing my scent. And at night, when we lay together in the nest of furs, she held me closer than ever, her body wrapped around mine like a shield against the world. One night, she brought me something, a necklace, woven from leather and bone, with a single fang hanging from the center. Her fang, I realized. She had pulled it from her own mouth.
Mate.
Mate, she said, her voice rough with emotion.
My mate.
My mate. I took the necklace with trembling hands. I understood what she was asking, what she was offering. A bond, a promise, a claim that went deeper than words, deeper than touch, deeper than anything I had ever known. I should have hesitated. I should have questioned whether this was real, whether I had simply lost my mind in this frozen cave, whether I was making a mistake that I would regret for the rest of my life. But I did not hesitate. I looked into her golden eyes, and I saw everything I had ever wanted. Protection, devotion, love. Not the cold, conditional love of my clan, given only when I was useful and withdrawn the moment I became inconvenient. But real love, fierce and possessive and eternal. Yes, I said, I am your mate, she howled. The sound filled the cave, echoed off the walls, rose up through the gap in the ceiling and into the night sky. It was a sound of triumph and joy, a declaration to the world that she had found what she had been searching for. And when the echo faded, she took me in her arms and held me so tightly that I could not breathe, and I did not care, because I was hers and she was mine, and nothing else mattered. The hunters came 3 weeks later. I was gathering wood near the cave entrance when I heard them. Voices carried on the wind, speaking in the language of my clan. My blood ran cold. They had followed me. Somehow, impossibly, they had tracked me through the wasteland and found me. I ran back to the cave, my heart pounding, my breath coming in desperate gasps. Fenris was already on her feet when I arrived, her ears flat against her skull, her lips pulled back in a snarl. She had heard them too. "We have to hide," I said, "or run. We have to go now." But she did not run. Instead, she turned to me and touched my face, her golden eyes filled with a fierce determination that made my chest ache. "Stay," she said. "I protect." And then she was gone, disappearing through the cave entrance before I could stop her. I tried to follow. I ran after her, stumbling through the snow, my heart screaming at me to go faster, to reach her before it was too late. But by the time I emerged from the cave, the fight had already begun. There were 6 of them, warriors from my clan, armed with spears and swords, their faces twisted with fear and hatred. They had formed a circle around Fenris, their weapons raised, their voices shouting commands that she did not understand. But she did not need to understand. She knew what they were. She knew what they had come to do. She moved like lightning. One moment she was standing still. The next, she was among them, her claws tearing through armor and flesh, her jaws snapping bones like twigs. The warriors screamed, scattered, tried to regroup, but she was too fast, too strong, too savage. She was a force of nature, a storm of fury and violence, and they were nothing but leaves caught in her wind. I watched, frozen, as she killed them. One by one, they fell, their blood staining the snow red, their screams fading into silence. And through it all, she made sure to stay between them and me, shielding me with her body, protecting me even as she destroyed them. When the last warrior fell, she stood in the center of the carnage, her fur matted with blood, her chest heaving with exertion. She turned to look at me, and I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of the fight, fear of my reaction. Fear that I would see her as a monster and turn away. I ran to her. I threw myself into her arms and held her as tightly as I could, pressing my face against her bloody fur, feeling her heart pound against my cheek. "I am here," I said. "I am not leaving. I am yours." She made a sound, half growl, half sob, and collapsed against me. We sank to our knees in the snow, holding each other, surrounded by the bodies of the men who had tried to take me from her. They would send more, I knew. When these warriors did not return, my clan would send others. They would keep coming until Fenris was dead or I was dragged back to face their justice. But I did not care. Let them come. Let them try. They would find not a helpless exile waiting for death, but a mate who had chosen her place. A woman who had found her home in the arms of a monster. We returned to the cave that night, and she cleaned herself in the underground spring while I prepared food. We ate together in silence, the weight of what had happened settling over us like a blanket. And when we finally lay down in our nest of furs, she pulled me close and held me tighter than ever before. "You could leave," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Go back. Be human again." I turned in her arms and looked into her golden eyes. I saw the fear there, the doubt, the desperate hope that I would say what she needed to hear. I touched her face, tracing the sharp line of her jaw, the soft curve of her lips. "I was never human there," I said. "They never let me be. But here, with you, I am finally myself. I am finally home." She made a sound that might have been a laugh or a cry, and she kissed me. Her lips were soft despite their darkness, and her fangs grazed my mouth with a gentleness that made my heart ache. I kissed her back, losing myself in her warmth, in her scent, in the overwhelming reality of her love. Outside, the wind howled across the frozen wasteland. The snow fell in endless white curtains, erasing the blood and the bodies and all traces of the violence that had occurred. And deep within the cave, wrapped in the arms of my mate, I smiled. They had exiled me to die. They had sent me into the frozen darkness expecting never to see me again. But they had made a mistake. They had sent me to her, to my protector, my guardian, my eternal mate. My name is Elara, and I am no longer afraid of the cold,